I had the chance earlier to talk with author Andrew Bragg about his upcoming book, The Devil's Playground, which releases on October 15th. His book covers, in particular, I know you guys have seen the clips and stuff that have been coming out, but covers the area of responsibility across the Arghandab River from where I was back in 2009 and 10. Um, they also experienced a lot of the same, just a different type of fight on that side of the river from us with 2nd Platoon Charlie Company as 2508 82nd Airborne Division. The stories that they tell in that book, I know we were tied to a few of the guys that ended up getting attached over there, but super important stories to read. I know it took me a little bit to get through his book, but something that I'm glad that he sat down and wrote a record of these stories. And it's even cooler to see where things have gone for him throughout this process and in involving the different guys that were in the platoon. So without further ado, don't crucify me too much for this episode. It's the first time I've done anything like this, but this is definitely something that has merit to push me out there and get him, get some time with him out there and talk about his stories and bringing forward these stories and what he's done in conjunction with the guys at 2 Charlie, and really the importance of putting down these stories in a format such as a book form, but sharing these stories with others. So I hope you enjoy. All right, so we're here today with Andrew Bragg, author of The Devil's Playground, coming on October 15th. I'm hoping that this video uploads by then. It should, but Andrew, it's great to have you, man.
Thanks. I really appreciate you having me on and giving me the opportunity to tell our story.
Kim, you've been out there, it's just hearing thing after thing. Really, with how we even came across to meet. I know I had my own book going on and everything else, but then it was one of your guys that had reached out and said, "Hey, you got to talk to this guy. Our story's being put down on paper. You guys need to get together and talk about this." And I believe it was we were talking about this before. Dale Nolinger, did I pronounce his
Yeah,
name right?
Dale Nollinger. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you
he
describe him as the glue for the
he's
2
done a
Charlie
lot
there.
to kind of bring 2 Charlie back together and help me with the process of getting all the guys to do the interviews and bring the band back together, really. I think we spoke on a Zoom call. Man, I think it was like February timeframe. I could be wrong. I know it was when you were in your early process of publication with Casemate.
The scramble.
Yeah. So I was still currently in the process of gathering interviews and traveling the country and stuff. But yeah, I remember we had a brief Zoom call to kind of go over that, and yeah, it was super
Well, that was one
helpful,
of the
and yeah.
coolest things from you that I kind of got is I know for you to dedicate the time and stuff and to travel across the country to get these interviews. I mean, you want to go into a little bit of that just because that's one of the coolest things about your book, and that I respect so much about what you did in the process here and getting those interviews down. You really truly did get it from everybody in the platoon, and that right there is just something really special.
Yeah, so I guess where it all started, right? We can give Ben Kessling his plug, because I'm sure that's what lit the fire under your guys' ass
That's
to
where
write
it
to
all
write your
started, was
book.
Bravo Company with Kessling there.
Yeah, so that book came out November of, was it 2022 or
22.
2023? 22.
22.
Um, so I'm not an avid reader, but I got that book because I heard it was about you guys, and I read that book in like 4 days. It brought back the sights, it brought back the sounds, it brought back the smells of the Arghandab River Valley. And I think he did a good job with the information that he was presented for not having been there.
Yeah.
Um,
He's a
and I just,
fantastic writer, and really the descriptions and stuff, like you're saying, like the
yeah.
smells and like that, he painted a really good picture from what he had been able to extrapolate from the other guys and stuff there. I
hmm
totally agree with you there.
So that November, I kind of was floating around with the idea of, well, like, man, we have such a story to tell as well. The guys of, Charlie Company, Second Platoon.
Yeah.
But I know there was hesitation in the past because I know we've been approached by journalists and stuff, and there's a couple magazine articles about us. There's one in the Reader's Digest, there's one in the
Yeah.
Atlantic Magazine.
Yeah.
Um, but as for like writing a book or, doing some sort of, I don't know, dramatic interpretation of it or whatever, guys have been hesitant in the past. So I went to one of my buddies who I stayed in touch with. I went to visit him for Christmas, and I was like, "Hey, man, like, what do you think about telling our story and writing a book about our story? What do you think about me doing it?" And he was just kind of like, "Well, man, if that's what you want to do, go for it." So after I got kind of his blessing, I got all the guys that I was friends with on Facebook and created this huge group message and was like, "Hey guys, what do you think about writing a book about us?" And yeah, there was no hesitation, and I think it was because it was one of us writing it that they were on board. So that New Year's Day, 2023, I started the trip around the country, and yeah, I
Thus it all began.
yeah, that was the beginning of the journey. One of the guys, he does a podcast, so he had podcasting equipment for me to borrow. And so that way I looked legit. I didn't, show up to people's doors and just put a phone on their dining room table and was like, all right, I actually had like podcasting gear, headphones, mics, everything. So I look like
Oh,
Joe
that's
Rogan
awesome.
just with hair. And
Heck yeah.
yeah, so I went and traveled the country, and I did my best to gather everybody. There were some guys that like were hesitant about the whole interview process, but I still wanted to see them, so I met them for breakfast or for lunch or whatever. And then there were guys I couldn't get a hold of at the
Yeah.
time. So I don't want to say I got everybody, but I mean I conducted like 30 interviews,
So
and
many.
I'm by far no, I'm not an expert. My interviews were um, pretty. Some of them were more conversational, more so than
Well, I mean, this
interviews.
is your
But
first book. You were really coming into your own here. And I mean, it's a what how did we kind of put that? I keep going to this route and keep having to remind myself of this, but it's the small improvements over time, and you probably noticed as you go back, I'm sure you hot washed every interview and were like, okay, like, oh man, I forgot to ask this or I missed this. I mean, that's
yeah,
just
so
it's part of the process.
the first couple of interviews that were kind of like that. But then I went down to visit one of our Gold Star family members. He lived in LA at the time.
Okay.
And I didn't know this. I just went to go meet him because I hadn't met him. He was basically one of my guy's twins. He looked
Mm-hmm.
exactly like him.
Oh,
Uh,
it's eerie.
yeah, it was very spooky. And I guess you could say I've been kind of avoiding it, but I needed to go meet him. So I wanted to
Yeah.
meet him and kind of get his blessing as well to tell the story, of his brother. And in the process, I learned that he taught screenwriting in Hollywood.
Oh, wow.
So he showed me gave me like a 15-minute like overview of how to write an outline for a script.
Okay. Yeah.
And then he had to go teach a class, and then I continued on with the mission. But that 15 minutes probably set me on the right path. Like I was like,
That's
oh,
awesome.
okay, so I'll create an outline for these interviews, and it was an organic outline, and it grew as I went. But having that guide to guide these interviews, and then not only to guide the interviews, but then to outline my book, each chapter of the book. What's
Yep.
the main focus? Who do I want to highlight when? And um, that really, if I didn't have that 15 minutes of here's how you should do this, I don't
Yeah.
know if I would have been successful in even writing this. So I really appreciated that. But yeah, as I continued on, obviously that outline was organic, and it kind of changed a little because guys would bring up stories and I'd be like, I completely forgot about that, and I'd put that in. That's got to go in. And I mean, the book only really scratches the surface of all the little side stories and stuff. You can't have
No, you
everything
can't.
because I'd still be writing this book if I did.
Yeah,
That, and you got to keep the reader's attention. So I don't know if they'd care to hear about, I don't know, stuff that we thought was funny or whatnot. But and it also leaves guys opportunities to write about it themselves. You know, I didn't want to
exactly.
steal that from them.
Yeah,
But yeah, so I wanted to write this book. I wanted to tell our story, but for me, I couldn't to tell this story right. I couldn't just tell my story.
yeah.
I had to tell our story. So to do it right, I had to get everybody's side, get everybody's perspective, and so that's what I did. I traveled around, met with as many guys as I could, interviewed them, and if I'm being honest, it was really just an excuse to see everybody again. We hadn't seen or
It's the
spoken
best
really.
excuse, though.
Yeah, oh yeah,
It really is.
yeah. Um, but we hadn't seen or really spoken for 12 years. I'm sure you guys with Bravo Company, you know, with the reunion you guys had, I don't know if any of you guys really had stayed in touch, but I know we as soon as we got back from that deployment, a lot of us were stop lost, and other guys went to different units. Some guys went the special operations route, but we kind of scattered like
Yeah.
roaches in the light, and we didn't look back. Um,
I think
and
a
we
lot of
spent
that
the last
happened in the
12.
GWAT though. You know, I mean, like a lot of that to where these units and stuff, just because of op tempo and everything else, it's some people, especially after a deployment like that, they've had it. Like they are to hear stuff from what was it? I know McAllister said something about it, Command Sergeant Major, and you know, I mean, here's 24 years, and for him to come out and say, you know, that was the roughest one I ever had. It's
Yeah,
like, wait, what? Like, it really was. I mean, it had guys that just were not. You're like, I'm hanging it up at this point. You know, in the op tempo of GWAT, and just that constant churn. It was almost like you'd get PCSed into a unit that was leaving to go right back there, and it's like, what am I doing here? I have no time at all, and it just leaves
yeah.
a real
Well,
mark
that's
on somebody.
I mean that's what happened with me. I did a 15-month deployment with the 173rd before
Yeah,
I came and did the Argandab deployment, and that was the Restrepo era. So I mean, I was with the first of the 503rd, and that was the second of the 503rd, so that was second battalion. But we were just south doing the same thing, building our own outpost, you know, and getting attacked from the mountaintops just like they were. We just didn't have a film crew. So I went from one rough deployment to the next, and I was just like, yeah, like I don't know if I could survive a third. so, um, but yeah, so that's what was kind of the motivation to write the book, was to get the band back together and to tell our story.
yeah. No, that's man, it's and that's a heck of a thing too. I know we were talking before is that we have these little pre-built support systems and stuff from these guys and stuff that we deployed with. Platoon is I don't know like about around how many guys were into Charlie.
Probably like 35 to
Okay, yeah,
40-ish. Yeah,
it's about
with
right.
attachments, you know, you got your medic, your FOs, stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, it's a normal platoon size.
Well, I was curious because I know at one time with First Platoon, you know, we dwindled down to about it was 28 guys, you know, to where it
Oh
was like
yeah, it
we're
was.
looking at manning schedules and we're like, oh my god, man, like we're waiting on these replacements and we don't have anybody to do it. Like, are you kidding me? And I
No,
know you
yeah,
probably
we
experienced a lot of the same.
there was a point where we were down to 2.5 squads, um, and we were operating on cop times, doing our own patrols, doing our own QRFs, and doing our own force pro. So you got a less than a squad worth of guys going on patrol to get hit, and then less than a
Yeah.
squad worth of guys to go QRF, and then a skeleton crew back at the outpost.
Yep.
Um, so
And you were
you know
so
we're
pulled apart from your own. I mean, like, do you want to go into like how you were separated from your company there as well? I know we experienced kind of the same thing, but you guys seem to be really out there flapping.
Yeah, we were, I think, the farthest northeast in our battalion AO. And our platoon, like 2 Charlie, our AO, like our platoon AO was
It
huge.
was huge. Yeah,
Yeah.
huge.
We had to go all the way northeast to the Schuins, which was probably like 4 kilometers, northeast of Cop Times, which, 4 kilometers, oh, that's 2 miles. But 2 miles in the
Not in that
Argonne,
area.
yeah, you might as well be on the moon. So yeah, that was just. I mean, I don't know the exact, square kilometers of our AO, but man, it was freaking huge. And 2 Charlie, we operated at Cop Times. You had 1 and 3 Charlie at Cop Nolan, and those guys were like in the thick of the orchards. Like their outpost, Cop Nolan was, man, it was amongst all the pomegranates and grape fields, and I mean they got direct contact on their outpost like quite a bit. I don't really go into it in the book because I feel like that's their story to tell. But it is a story that needs to be told. So I'm hoping 1 or 3 Charlie step up to tell it. But yeah,
I think we're
so
right in the beginning of all this with all these
yeah,
no, I'm dead serious. Like between yourself and then I know one of the guys from Alpha Company seems to be trying to organize, he's got an outline together and everything else, but he's kind of run into the same thing. Like I mean, where it in a book you can only, and even fitting a platoon size in there with somewhere that was as kinetic as the Argondob, even that was tough, because
yeah,
you're looking at it and you're like, man, like just the amount of stuff, like what do I put in here? What do I leave out? And I know I had experienced a lot of the same thing. Like, and it's like, all right, if I do touch on this, how much do I want to reveal so that there's still a story for somebody else to put out there? Because there's so much that happened out there, and these stories are getting pulled apart and really by the guys that were personally there. And I think that's one of the coolest things here is that, this first starting with Kesslings, and then, we have Damn the Valley and we have The Devil's Playground now coming, and these other books, you had mentioned too, the 101st, we can get into that later, but 101st that replaced you guys, they have their own story coming from Casemate in the spring that was
hmm
uh, also orchestrated by stuff through yourself, through some of the advice and everything that you had gotten along the way. And it's just cool to see this ripple effect from everything and see these stories start to take shape and be brought forth. I mean, it's cool to see and to be on the cusp of, because we always hear these Navy SEAL stories, and not against special operations, like they're kinetic as heck out there, but it's a different story, the conventional end. But a lot of the stuff in the global war on terror, we were doing a lot of that, a lot of the groundwork to where special operations would run the helicopters or something. We'd do all the groundwork, put the target package together and stuff. Hey, this is what we're dealing with. And then I don't know if this ever happened to you guys, but it was almost like, all right, you guys are going to be outer cordon. And then they come in, they get the kill. And you're like, all right, so now we just
yeah.
got to walk around the minefields again or wait for the next ambush. Like, what is going on here?
Well, that or you have to deal with the aftermath of the enemy
Oh,
losing their HVT. So they're pissed.
yeah.
So, oh yeah, it must be real nice to be able to do a hard knock, get your guy, and then leave. We had to stick around and deal with the aftermath. It's like you
Yeah.
shook the hornet's nest, and we're the ones getting stung. So, not that their job is easy. They're special operations, and yeah,
Yeah.
they
It's just a
obviously have a
different
selection for
job.
a reason. It's not for everybody, but I
Yeah.
I don't think that our fight should be downplayed by any means.
No, no. And I think a lot of the guys that either they have a story to tell, but they feel marginalized by those other stories. Because like, oh, I wasn't a cool guy, or like, man, those guys
Yeah.
just have seen it all. And it's like, nah, you saw a lot of the same stuff. Like once you start picking it apart and everything, you're like, they have some cool stories and they definitely had the equipment. Um, but walking through and trudging through and doing some of the day to day that the conventional end ended up with, you're like, man, like what? Oh, did you guys have A&P or A&A out with you
So
guys on Tynes?
so at times, yeah, we had Bismullah. He was our police chief, and we had his police force. Which, I mean, I don't know how if your guys' AMP was very loyal. Um, ours was loyal, but at the same time, you could tell there was corruption.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there'd be constantly new officers that would show up, and it's like, who are you?
Yep.
And there's instances where we kind of questioned not really their loyalty. They were always loyal to us, but we kind of questioned, you know, their. I guess their loyalty is what you could
No,
bring
you,
down
you
to,
what
and
you're getting into is the same thing. We had a lot of the same, like to where sometimes they wouldn't want to go on patrol with us. Like we had, I'm trying to remember his name, but we had a great police chief. He had trained as a commando, and then because he knew of the amount of corruption within in the police force, he actually didn't go into the commandos. He like dropped his commission as a commando officer, went into the police force, and had like a hand selected crew at first. But then they started rotating in other soldiers or other police officers, and you'd see, as we're leaving for patrol, you see one of them getting on the phone, and you're like, you start to question, like, well, what's going on here? And those are the days you're starting to see things, and it's like, all right, snatch that guy up, make him come out with us, and they're like terrified out there. And they don't go on another patrol with you, and you're like, then you just know, so you start anyone who's coming in, you start running through the hide system and stuff, and they're like, oh, what's going on here? And it's like, yeah, we trust you, but we don't trust you. What is that that we say in the you were an NCO, trust but verify?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, and initially when we first got the tines, like the AMP wouldn't even walk around with their uniforms on. So you'd have guys in man dresses carrying
Oh
AKs
man,
walking up on cop times, and we'd be like, "Whoa, what are you doing?"
yeah,
So yeah, we worked with them. They got better, but it never got to a point where you could 100% trust them, and they did things that definitely questioned their loyalty. Even the police chief himself, like we caught him with a radio, and it's like, what is this?
mm,
And they'd ask for more ammo, and we'd be like, you guys haven't been in a firefight in over a week. Why do you need more ammo? You haven't been to the range. What are you doing with all this ammo? Where's it going?
yeah,
And then this story didn't make it into the book, so I feel like I can tell it. But they were flipping pigeons. So whenever we would leave Cop Tines, they had one of their officers. They had carrier pigeons for pets, and they'd go
yep,
take them, and they'd be just like training day, clapping, flipping the pigeons as kind of like
mm-hmm.
their version of the kites that the kids would fly to mark where we were in the valley and stuff. And so they did a
That's funny you
lot of
mentioned that. That's
yeah,
We
they
had
did a
someone
lot.
in Pierre Pamal, same thing, right up from us. That's just like one of their. When you take a technological force that we're very dependent on radios and the other stuff, and you're dealing with people that are hand delivered messages and spotters and carrier pigeons, just that people don't realize, you don't even realize until you start picking up on those signs and go, whoa, hey, like, wait a second, what's going on
Yeah.
here?
Well, I mean, our interpreters would listen on the radios, and as soon as we left the outpost, they were watching us, tracking our movements. I'm sure same with you guys. It's they have their TTPs, and it was a game of cat and mouse. We would learn from them and adapt and overcome, and then they would learn from us and adapt and overcome. And
Yep.
sometimes it was unclear who was the cat and who was the mouse.
So I think I heard actually on one of the other, maybe it was because I know I read through your manuscript and stuff, and I don't know if you mentioned it in there, but did you guys did the Terp at one point kind of goad them into a fight before, or maybe a few times you guys would do that? I heard something about
Uh,
this.
I mean, that's happened quite a lot. Like, I mean, I think everybody has their interpreter do that at some point. um, but yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. I think it's funny. We gave the same name to our interpreter because I read like your interpreter was Gucci, and I was like, no way, that's what we called our interpreter because
Right?
he had
They
like these
love
Gucci
those names.
glasses or he had like a Gucci T-shirt or something. So we just called him Gucci. But yeah, I don't want to say that was a common thing we did, talk to the enemy, because I think that was a no no. You weren't supposed to do that. But I'm not going to say it didn't happen once or twice.
Right. Yeah, there was I know I've talked with somebody since, like in doing interviews and everything. Did you guys have anything like SOT or like a listening, like other than your ICOMs and the small stuff that you guys had to listen in? Was there any assets like that with you guys at all, or nothing?
Not that I can recall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know Bravo didn't have anything like that. I was just curious, like getting to talk to you personally on this, if that was something that Charlie had worked into the mix, or if you had heard anything from battalion or brigade ends of things. I'll get to the end of it. I'll find out.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
um,
we the only thing I could think of that was something like that is after we had gotten into a firefight and we had the Kiowas come in and do a gun run, we got confirmation that we actually got a couple of them, and we actually got one of the leaders, and they were holding a funeral in the Schuins. So we got that intel, and we were all like, "Let's go! Let's
let's
get
show
them.
up to
They're
the
all
funeral,
right
pay our
there."
respects.
Because they had actually ambushed us on the way back from one of our boots and rifle ceremonies. Um,
Okay,
so we were kind of like, let's do that to them. Let's set
return
up
the
an
favor.
ambush for them. But
Yeah,
we weren't allowed to, based off of respect for them. I wish we were given that same respect, but yeah,
that's actually one of the things I know. I'm curious. I know one of the guys had said something like, that they were just bitter towards the guys and stuff like that, but or towards the enemy and stuff out there. And yeah, I mean the stuff that we faced and everything. But if you put in the perspective of, I mean you're in a war and these are insurgents, but soldiers nonetheless, and stuff to a degree. I don't know if they fought honorably on that end, or really if honor even came into something like that question. But I mean, what are your thoughts about? Would you ever sit down and talk with any of them, or?
I've had that discussion with some of the guys, and I mean, I can only really speak for my own opinion, so I don't want to say this is all of the
Yeah,
guys
yeah, yeah,
think this way. But I did talk with one of the guys about that, and it's like it's really hard. I mean, they were just the other side of the coin, right? They
yeah,
were warriors just like us, and they it's hard to be mad at them for doing what they needed to do to win, and because that's what we would do. Uh, when the fight
to a point, of
becomes,
course.
yeah, when the fight becomes existential, that's kind of when honor goes out the window, right? Because you're fighting for existence and
Yeah,
anything goes. And I feel like that's kind of the side, more to the side they were on. And I'd like to think that, with our ROE and, all the rules we had to follow, we still fought with some sort of honor. Um, because our fight really, I mean, we were fighting for survival at one point too, but it wasn't like that in, your own backyard. So, I can't remember who said that, but like, yeah, when the fight becomes as existential, then all honor goes out the window, and that's a bloody battle, and that's kind of what we saw, right, with the tactics they used. I mean, you guys saw it with the IEDs. We experienced that as well. They would use the IEDs in their ambushes, so they'd set up their L-shaped ambushes on their IEDs, and they'd wait for us to trigger them. And if we were lucky and didn't hit it, they would pop up anyways and start shooting at us to try to create chaos so that we would hit it.
would hit it. Yep.
And they would watch us, and initially they'd start shooting and just pop shots, right? And just to see what we would do.
Draw you
And they would
in.
learn, and they'd be like, okay, so they're gonna try to flank us. So they'd start setting up their IEDs on their flanks. So they'd be baiting us into stuff. Um,
Mm,
initially the fights were kind of like that. It wasn't really a sustained fight. It was just, hey, they're going to pop over the wall, shoot at us, and then we're going to maneuver on them, and then they're already exfilled, and they're going to pop over the wall over there, shoot at us. So you could tell they were drawing us into something.
yeah. So
And
were you guys at first were thinking maybe, okay, like they're just running away. Is this standard out here? Take some shots and go. Like, so it's keeping you guys on the ball too.
yeah, exactly. And we learned what they were doing, so we're like, we're not going to play that game. So we try to use our Kiowa assets as well as we could, when they were available. But yeah, then like when the real fighters got into the valley, that's when kind of shit hit the fan, and it was less so pop shots and
Yeah.
guys running away and trying to bait you into something, and more so they were there to fight.
Yeah.
And yeah,
And that was some of the stuff that I saw. Like, I know just with the different varying experiences throughout that particular valley where, Bravo Company, it was mainly landmines and a lot of it was isolated. A lot of times we were waiting for that follow on attack or that complex attack where they were kind of using everything together. But reading in your book about having to worry about stutter stepping through a freaking minefield while under fire, and maneuver on the enemy during that right there is something that's always in your mind, but at the same time, really, I can say that I never personally experienced that. Moving to contact while having to watch the ground like that. I always just maybe it was just me, but I'm trucking along with the radio. Hey,
yeah,
let's make sure I'm giving sit reps and stuff, but never having to like look like that or be that concerned about that. That right there is insane to me.
yeah. It's like a man. So my first deployment with the 173rd, we got into a lot of firefights, a lot of direct contact, a lot of indirect contact, but we always had the freedom of movement. You could always
Mm,
perform battle drill 1 alpha, squad attack
yeah,
or even platoon attack. You could always maneuver on the enemy. And to take that freedom of movement away, that's, oh man, that's how you do it. Because like you said, having to worry about every step you're taking also while running, trying not to get shot is
yeah.
and it's not like they were just, like I said, taking pop shots. It got to the point where they're
This is
popping
effective
over the
fire.
wall 50 feet away with like 5 PKM machine guns unloading on us,
Yep.
and they even dug holes through the walls, like
I was
little
gonna
like
say the
10-inch
murder
diameter
holes.
holes. Yeah, the murder
Yeah,
holes. So they didn't even have to pop over the walls. They could just shove their barrel through those holes and shoot at us. And I mean, yeah, it's a
where were you on the first?
completely.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to step
no,
on you
you're
there,
good.
but the
Yeah,
first
my first
deployment, like just
deployment.
because the terrain wise, I know
Yeah,
there's like
so
just such a very difference.
yeah, the first deployment, I was in Paktika province. I was part of the
Okay.
173rd, the first of the 503rd. So we deployed to Paktika. I was in Fob Bermel. I think it got
Okay.
renamed Fob Boris after one of the Cav first sergeants that died out there from an IED. Which we experienced IEDs my first deployment, but they just blew the hoods off of Humvees. It wasn't
Yeah.
like the catastrophic ones that were splitting strikers in half like we were experiencing.
Yeah, I know double stack tank mines and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Well, what year
yeah,
was that too? That because I know there was a definite ramp up. It was almost like they were learning from the Iraqis because I know that was the major 2008 and stuff was really a lot of EFPs and stuff in Iraq, and they were really starting to put things together. And we saw a lot of that stuff transfer over to Afghanistan.
yeah. It was 2007 to 2008. So that was a
Okay,
15 monther. I think I deployed March of 2007, and we didn't get back till like July of
that's
2008.
a long deployment.
Yeah, and that was another kinetic deployment. So yeah,
Mm,
and you talk about like guys, learning stuff in Iraq. Well, there was this ambush that we were in, and I mean, I talk about it a lot because it it's one of the things that sticks out to me from that deployment. But it was like June 21st ambush, and my 173rd brothers can verify that. I want to say it's June 21st because I have a folder of all the photos from that day. Um, but yeah, we got hit coming back from a company operation, and there was over 150 guys that ambushed us, and the kill zone was a kilometer, at least a kilometer long. And they were
oof,
able. Thank God they didn't have an ID in place on the road, but they were still able to disable vehicles. They had RPG nines that absolutely destroyed the engine block of one of our newer up armored vehicles, and had to evac guys while that vehicle's like burning. Um,
yeah,
and it was funny. We just abandoned that truck. We just left it there.
just rolled
Uh,
through, huh?
we came back and recovered it, but I think we just chucked a thermite in the driver's side and to get rid of all the Blue Force tracker and whatnot,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
Sensitive
then just
items.
kept
Track
going
them and go.
because. But during that ambush, like I said, there was over 150 guys confirmed, and they were speaking 6 or 7 different languages over the
Yep.
radios. The interpreters were like, "Oh, they're speaking Turkish now. Oh, they're speaking, what, like, whatever now."
Yeah.
So Afghanistan was kind of the place that whoever wanted to fight Americans or whoever wanted to fight the coalition forces could go.
Yep.
It was like the Wild
People don't
West, you know.
realize that. People
Yeah,
do not realize, because we were experiencing a lot of the same things in our AO. Is like you run them through the bat or the hide system, and these guys would pop up. Hey, seen in Iraq or seen in Pakistan, like seen at this incident. Like, and dang well that like, what they're doing. They're just
yeah,
following to,
yeah,
hey, they're a fighter. Like that is what they're doing, and people don't realize like what a jihad is and how these people go about this. And these are experienced fighters out there, and they're following the fight, and it's an opportunity to attack America and to attack America idealisms and freedom, and to, I guess, further whatever mission that they're trying to do. Some of them are just there to fight, but a lot of them, that religious extremism there,
yeah,
behind a lot of that is just um, it's something that these days relevant more than ever, because with the world shrinking and how borders are open and everything else, it's something you got to worry about. And it's a lot of things that we saw a lot of this stuff, and with the way the world is right now and the way things are going, um, there's a lot of the guys that we hold some knowledge that's really relevant, and being
yeah,
able to use that in the future one way or another is, I hope it doesn't ever come to that again. But I mean, there's guys out there.
yeah. I mean, to answer your question though about like the difference in like fighting and stuff like that, not only like the numbers of guys different, but
Yeah.
like the terrain was different. So like our mission, my first deployment with the 173rd, like we were right on the Pakistan border, so we were there to
Mm-hmm.
kind of intercept the freedom of movement of the enemy troops into
Going back
Pakistan.
and forth.
Yep. So we would run into hundreds of guys crossing the border from Pakistan, and I mean ISR. You got your drone footage and stuff of guys literally on a ruck march from Pakistan coming over the border, and the terrain was so mountainous. It's I equate it to like kind of like Colorado, the Rocky Mountains.
Yeah.
But we're fighting mountaintop to mountaintop. There's a couple of close ambushes where you summit a hill and all of a sudden the enemy's on the hill too, and we got into some close skirmishes.
Surprise.
But for the most part, it was mountaintop to mountaintop. Um, but yeah, like we had the freedom of movement, and that's I cannot tell you how crippling that was the second deployment to be afraid to
Put in
take
a
every
box like
step.
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Psychologically, I mean, that was a lot of what I've seen through the Argandab stuff and all that is the toll psychologically was huge, to where we,
yeah,
as 173rd, any paratrooper out there, any infantrymen, but paratroopers especially, we want gunfights. Gunfights is our bread and butter. I'll
yeah,
take a gunfight any day over having to worry about getting my legs blown off.
yeah.
It just takes a whole different element there. Do you want to go into? I know people see the pictures and stuff that are both on, both the campaigns and stuff there. And for people that are watching this and stuff, at damn or not damn the vet, man, I'm on my own right now. The Devil's Playground book. So is there or is it just Devil's Playground?
It's the Devil's Playground book. Yeah,
So at the Devil's Playground book on Instagram, Facebook, and so Andrew's been posting up pictures and stuff a lot like I have on this one, that it shows you a lot of the varied terrain, and it's just crazy because you have mountains in the background and these orchards to where you can't see into them. They really had a lot of freedom there to move to where they know where everything is, but the amount of stuff that just clogged up the works to move through that, crazy.
yeah. It's what people like. Even though we had Kiowa air support, it was only to so much extent because they couldn't see through the canopies of the pomegranates. So we'd be in a firefight and they would just be flying overhead doing what they could, really kind of a deterrence, because once the enemy heard the Kiowas, yeah,
Yeah,
it kind of
they
deterred
knew.
them. But then it got to they figured it out. They figured out that they couldn't see him. So
Yeah,
man, it's so crazy to think of a Vietnam jungle in a like what people think as a desert, conflict. But that's how we described it. And I don't know, like, because I
yeah.
know your guys' phrase is "damn the valley." Well, we have a phrase that we said "damn the Dob," so we shortened the
Okay.
Argon Dob to the Dob, like
The
Vietnam veterans shortened Vietnam to Nam.
Yeah.
So
There
so
was a
our
lot.
saying is
Yeah.
"damn the Dob," but yeah, like it's you could really just I wasn't in Vietnam, and I don't know if I'm doing a disservice to equating our
No,
conflict to
there was a
theirs.
lot. There's a lot of
Yeah.
people that actually do that. There's, and do you have a background with like Vietnam books at all, or like did you have anything prior to being there, like
No,
in the
not
Dom?
prior to like, or when I was an 18-year-old kid now. I didn't
Yeah, so
read
that's
much.
one of the things when I was in high school and stuff. That was my biggest thing. I loved reading Vietnam War books and accounts and stuff from there, and a lot of that would come back up as we're going through some of these canals, and you got elephant grass and stuff over you, and I'm like, man, like I feel like this is what those guys did. How am I experiencing this? But in Afghanistan, like this is just
Yeah.
surreal, just so strange.
Yeah, you're holding your rifle over your head like so it doesn't submerge under the water, just like this is straight out of Vietnam. it's
Exactly.
it's a it's I mean, if we go into like history and stuff, there wasn't a lot of literature available to us while we were there, which is unfortunate. But I mean, since that time, there's been some books that have been written, not just from our
Mhm.
perspective, but like the British, the Russians. There's a lot
Canadians.
of literature out there, and it's like looking back, hindsight, man, that would have been super helpful to read those stories. And because if you look at some of the literature from the Russians in the 80s, we were
Yeah.
fighting the exact same fight that they
Exact
were.
same. Yep.
There's a book, I think it's called Over the Mountain. I don't have my notes on me, but
It's
you
all
look at
good.
the stories that they told, and even the villages that they fought in. They fought
Yep.
in out of Babur. They fought out of Jelawar. They set up their
Yep.
ambushes in their mines, from the paths that the Russians would take out of Jelawar. Like Jelawar was our west corner of Cop Tines.
Yeah.
We were walking the same roads, the same paths, the same fields as the Russians were, and they just did a cookie cutter playbook, from the 80s and did it with
Yeah.
us,
Yep.
and I wish that we would have had that knowledge and that material available to us then. But obviously, hindsight's always 2020.
Well, at the
Um,
same time, too, is I mean, our retired CSM, for the first half there, CSM Burt Puckett, I had actually brought up with some of the research. I came across a bunch of British military journals and stuff with like paintings of the mountain range of the Daub. A guy had done a pencil sketch and stuff there out of a military tent. You can think of here's the proper British during tea time, like sketching this thing out and stuff. But I asked him, like, this is crazy. Have you seen any of this? And he's like, oh yeah, like me and the commander were going over all of this before we had entered the valley and stuff. He's like, yeah, I've seen it before. And it was crazy that, even he had to go and search for this stuff, but to see that, and there was someone else, I don't think it was you, but someone had contacted me with a story and he had said something about, Alexander the Great. And I had remembered too. I think it was either you guys had the Russian tanks, the field of Russian tanks or something on one of the mountains, or was it something about
so that was in
Alexander?
the Panjwai district when we were
Okay.
before we had moved into the Arghandab. When we were attached to the Canadian forces,
Okay.
we had this hill. There was a cell phone tower at the top of this hill, and there was three old Russian tanks on this hill. We called it Three Tank Hill,
Yeah.
and we would go there to fight because whenever there'd be forces that were occupying that hill, the enemy would like to shoot at them. So we go there, and always at dusk they'd start launching their RPGs at the hill and shooting at us. And that was one place we know we could go to get into a fight. Was Three Tank Hill, and then there was a village in Panjwai called Chowgar. Every time we went
Okay.
there, we got into a little skirmish, but I don't know if it was just the type or the time of year, because that was kind of September November time frame, or
Hmm.
September October November time frame. Uh, but those fights were always one sided, and we had gotten pretty lucky up to that point. And you know, you're young and dumb, you feel invincible. You're like, yeah, this is what war is. Yeah, and then uh, we got sat down very, very quickly, and I'm sure you guys had kind of a similar experience where it's like, oh man, like we're not
You get humbled
invincible,
real quick. Yep.
we're mortal, and yeah,
Oh
you
yeah.
kind of realize that, and
So from there too, actually, this is a good point to segment into that. You going around the country and stuff and meeting the guys and reconnecting with everybody and stuff there.
mhm.
How they doing now?
um, so I would kind of vaguely say that the valley still has an effect on each guy in some way, right? Some
Yeah,
are some it affects them more than others.
I
Like
think
I
that's for
had
all of
some,
us.
yeah, and
You
I
know,
had some guys who were willing to meet with me, but they didn't want to talk about it, and I respected that. I, you know, 100% wanted to see them. I met them for breakfast or for lunch, and then there were guys who, it was they. That's all they would talk about. Were the high school quarterbacks still wearing our Letterman jackets at the bar? Um,
yep.
so uh, each guy it affected differently, but I would say for the most part, every guy is doing well.
It's good.
They had it was so powerful to see their families, see their wives that they had ended up marrying or who were still married from then, to see their kids, to see what they're doing job wise, stuff like that. It was it was awesome. And I had been kind of in a rough spot in my own life, so it's kind of what I needed uh, to see was, hey, if these guys, can succeed and not let the valley get a hold of them,
Yeah.
then so can I. Um, so yeah, that was really cool. But yeah, for the most part, guys, two Charlie guys are doing well.
How about you?
I'm doing good. Had a like I said, I had a rough patch where I thought it would be a good idea to live out of my truck. uh,
I mean, that's
yeah,
one of the things that blew my mind. Is I mean, was it a Tacoma or something like that that you were running out of the back of or something like that? It's
yeah. I'll give
man.
Toyota a plug. Yeah, Tacoma. I'm a Tacoma guy, but I had read a book, and it was, I don't know. It got something. It along with like PTSD, it made me think, oh, this is a great idea. Let's live out of my truck. It was the book was The Comfort Crisis, and it
Okay.
talks basically. It's a really good book. I recommend it. But it talks about how modern day society we are constantly seeking comforts, and
Hmm.
it's almost like we're becoming not lesser humans, but we're evolving into kind of like a weaker version of what we used to
Yeah.
be.
We're being
And
coddled.
yeah,
You know.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's research done the health benefits to not like completely like submerging yourself into like suffering, but exposing
But doing.
yourself to the
Yeah.
elements, going out of your comfort zone. There's benefits to it. And I just took that and went full throttle, like, oh well, I don't need to live
Oh yeah.
inside.
You
So
you
I,
went, yeah, but you took the skills that, I mean, you kind of took over from the military, and you
yeah,
were like, okay, I can take this. I got this. I can do this.
yeah,
Um,
I mean it I
man.
was like
Woo.
I was like, yeah, like let's do this. And I was also trying to save up for I wanted to buy properties. So I worked two
Yeah.
jobs while living out of the truck for about a year. And really, I mean, if you look at my truck is like quicksand, so it's like the same color as our Humvees and MRAPs were. So if you want to
Okay.
dig deep, I
Maybe there's
maybe
a something underneath there,
yeah, maybe there's an
Yeah. Who
underlying
knows?
thing, and I kind of saw that theme amongst some of the guys. Some guys worked at one guy worked at a grape vineyard in Napa,
Okay.
California, and I was like, you don't see any similarities between you can't get out of the grape fields.
Ah,
Another guy had a pomegranate. tree in his backyard. I was like, man, like we cannot
Oh,
escape this place.
yeah.
Um, but
I have thought about planting one, just because those pomegranates out there were so, oh my gosh, we got yelled at one point because we were kind of grabbing them and they were like, hey, this is these people's livelihood. We'll pay for them, but
yeah, we did the same. We'd fill our pockets with grapes and pomegranates and stuff, and we even got caught by the farmers once, like red-handed. You're just reaching up for like a plum, and you
yeah,
look over. You're like, "Can we take a plum?" And they would go like, "Whoa, whoa!" But it's like, are you gonna tell someone with a gun no? I
yeah,
kind of feel
yeah,
bad for that. We did kind of, you know, not really like raid and pillage, but we did take what we what we wanted. um, but yeah,
well, that
so
hunger side of things too. I mean, I'm sure people don't experience. There was a 3-day portion to where we're sitting there establishing cop ware, and guys are pulling radishes out of the ground because it was made in a radish field, and
yeah,
they're literally like, we're starving here. There's no resupply. We don't have any MREs anymore. What are we doing? Well, you can survive on water. And it's like, dude,
yeah.
people are
With the amount
cleaning
of
off
like physical
radishes and
work we were doing,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
We had a similar thing. It wasn't radishes. We actually went and bought two goats or sheep. I don't know the difference.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, it was
Had a
kind of
cook off.
funny. We went to a goat herder and we were running low on MREs, so we wanted a warm meal. So we bought two goats and brought them back to the outpost and butchered them and had a warm
There you
meal.
go. There you
And
go.
then the goat herder came back and was like, "Hey, I want more money." And we're like, "No, we gave you the price you asked.
Yeah. You
We didn't try
agreed.
to, barter with you or like get your price down. You told us, you named the price and we gave it to you." He's like, "Well, I didn't know you were going to kill the goats." It's like, well, what did you think we were going to do with goats? Just like
Yeah.
start our
Right.
own herd? Like, what the heck? So, um,
We have come to be goat herders of
yeah,
Afghanistan.
yeah. So I don't know what ended up with that. If we gave him more money or not, we probably made a enemy that day amongst the goat herding populace. But yeah, no. So
So I mean, really, through all this, how's it? We kind of talked about it before and stuff, and I know we had a conversation off camera. We probably should have been recording at that point, but how's it been with the guys' response to this, and like, how's it been for you in all this, seeing that you went through the editing process and stuff? How many times did you have to rewrite it? I know a lot of what I saw, it looked pretty complete to start with, but I also know that you catch more, and as you go back through it a few times and stuff, there's more that bubbles up and you're like, okay, like how
yeah.
was that?
So I guess my process is I went to the local library and sat down every single day for about 6 months. And what I did initially, so the first day of every chapter, I had started my outline for what I kind of wanted that chapter to consist of. And then I would go through all 30 of my interviews and I would listen to that section from every guy. And I would take notes on what they said, things that I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's got to go in there. And I kind of try to decide, okay, who's going to get the spotlight here, and I did have some idea of building characters throughout, but I wanted to get everybody's name in the book at
Yeah,
least once. Um, and I hope it's not too chaotic because it's hard to write a book with like 30, main
so hard.
characters. But I think I did all right.
I think you did a
But I,
fantastic job, honestly. From everything I saw in there, I really have to respect everything that you've done there and everything that you've done for these guys. I mean, this is something that, for the guys that don't realize and stuff, I mean, this is, you went through the full process. You went through not only writing this thing, I mean, this is submitted to the DoD. This has gone through that process of that. This has gone through the process of, this is in the Library of Congress. This is now part of the historical archives that this can be looked at for perpetuity. I mean, this is there for generations to be able to look at that and, be really proud of what you guys did, regardless of the outcome. We were talking about hard things before. I can't think of much else as harder than, a war zone like that at the peak of what it was, um, they can hang their heads high,
Yeah.
for what they did out there and stuff. And what you've done with this whole thing is extremely. I mean, it's amazing to see the sacrifice that you put out to do this. And I hope these guys realize just where you've gotten it to and where it is right now. It's awesome to see, and I hope it's appreciated, man. It's amazing what you've done here.
Well, I thank you for that. Yeah, I mean,
It's well
I
deserved,
don't like
man.
to
Well
I like to
deserved.
humble myself and just it's like
I think we all do. We all
yeah,
do. But
but I mean
it's
it's like what
someone
you
has to.
said. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, no, you're good.
It's like what you said though. I mean, like I did this for the guys, and the main purpose was to get the band back together. And
Yeah.
after all my trip around the country interviewing the guys, we had like a reunion at our platoon sergeant's son's wedding. So we
Hmm.
crashed a wedding, and that was like that was awesome. And we're
I
continuing to
bet.
try to do that in the future. But so
Good.
after I took all my notes from listening to the interviews, it was time to like write that chapter, and I go chapter by chapter, um, and I'd write it down, and then I would read it to myself. And then after reading it to myself and being like, "Wow, this is bad," I'd rewrite it some things, or I would yeah, keep it as is if I liked it. And then what I would do is I'd reach out to a couple of the guys, and I'd be like, hey, as I wrote the chapters, I'd send it their way and be like, all right, check me. What do you think? Is it right? Is it, do you like it? What does it need? So they give me their feedback as well. And then eventually, as I got closer to the end of writing my first draft manuscript, um, I gave it to all the guys that all the guys that I could. I can't say I gave it to all the guys because
Yeah, no, I
there were a
understand. You have to
couple.
compartmentalize that stuff and stuff too, like for
Yeah.
certain incidents. Yeah.
So I basically sent out another group message on Facebook and was like, okay, like who wants to read it? And a lot of the guys partaked. And then, so once it was done, I had as many of the guys as I could read it to give me their thumbs up. And we had what we called Bragg's Book Club. Every
There
Sunday
you
throughout the
go.
month of January, I assigned them reading homework, and the first Sunday we go over chapters 1 through 5, and then 6 through 10, and so on until we were done with the book. And they gave me their feedback, and they're like, "Oh, we need to tweak this," or like, and but for the most part, like I think I'd nailed it. And I did make the corrections that needed to be made. But to me, the most important thing is that like those guys thought I did good, and I wanted to include them in the process as much as I could. So, like I said, after I was done writing
Which is
it,
not easy. It's
yeah,
not easy.
no, it's
Herding
not.
cat.
And that's one thing that I was worried about was when you tell a story from different perspectives, you might run into some contrast or conflicting like
Yes.
memories. And I really
Hmm.
like what you put in your author from the letter, or letter from the author.
Hmm.
I really like what you said, and I really don't want to misquote it, but you said something along the lines of, if you have 100 different people tell a single story, you could have 100 different stories, and it's not to
Yes.
say that any of those is wrong. It's just might not be as accurate.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah. It's how that
I mean, I could be
person
completely botching
experience.
that
No, no, no,
that
no. You're
quote.
you're no, you're right on it. It's the fact that that person's particular perspective and how they experienced it, their mind is locked in as that is true and what
Hmm.
happened and stuff. So for them and for that particular person, it's that is gospel, and that is what they know. So like when you did you I know that I had a few instances to where that was challenged. Not my stuff per se, but there was a few to where I was like, okay, in the process and how it was done, I had to bring in additional people just to make sure and fact check without them cross talking before they saw the chapter and stuff. And then I had to go back to the one where there was the question and be like, that especially being the person it was, I'm like, this is going to be tough because that's what they've accepted as being true that long. And be like, I don't want to challenge your reality and stuff, but I've talked with multiple other people, and this is what we saw is happening. Like, I don't want to freak you out or anything, and explain the whole thing behind traumatic moments and how those things perspectives are. Like, did you run into any of that type of thing with your book, and how did you deal
Yeah.
with it?
So surprisingly, for the most part, no. We
Good.
all remembered all too well what happened
Yeah.
in that valley,
Yep.
which made it a little easier for me to write, because I didn't have to like, who do I go with? It
Yeah, there
was,
wasn't much on my end either. Like, so, and
yeah.
that's good to hear though.
I mean, there was minor, like discrepancies, like, oh, did we bring this kid in the compound or did we leave? It's stupid stuff that didn't really matter to the story. Um,
Matters
but
someone though, you know? Yeah.
well, yeah, but
You
for
know?
the most part, like it was all pretty the same.
Good.
Um, and it was just a different perspective. So that
Yeah.
made it really uh, easy. I wouldn't say it's easy. It was still difficult to kind of string all together and put all together, but it
Of
definitely could have
course.
been a lot harder. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, after stringing it all together and then having the guys read it and then making the minor corrections that they wanted me to, um, I I got their thumbs up, and that's when I kind of pursued Casemate. And you opened the door for me there. Um, I appreciate that. And yeah, I got
Hey,
that.
look, it's the credit though honestly goes to you, man, because that when I saw it and you were questioning the manuscript, and I'm like, Andrew, listen, man, like let's move this forward, and then at that point if it's crap. And I knew it wasn't crap because what I had seen, I'm like, this is the full book. Like the way that you wrote it and your attention to detail on it. I'm like, this is awesome.
Well, that was another thing that I did that I didn't really. I mean, I kind of started sharing with the guys, but like, I got like the first 12 chapters down, and I just like. I don't know if you ran into this. It's not that I lost motivation. I just kind of questioned if all the time and energy I was putting into it was going to be worth it. Because
Yeah.
I was like, man, I'm like, I didn't go to school for writing. I mean, I did art while I was in high school, but not, I never thought I could, write a book. So what I did is that at the same library that I was writing it, every Tuesday they had a writing club. And I went to the writing club not only to like write, but also to kind of like get like pointers and stuff. And I
Mm-hmm.
ended up sharing it with people that weren't in the circle, right? Because obviously the two Charlie guys, like we're a little biased, right? It's our story. We think it's the greatest thing ever. I wanted to get the perspective from people who had no idea who we were. And I shared it with a couple of people. I mean, it was hilarious. Like most of these people were writing stories about like elves and shit, like they were writing like Dungeons and Dragons. And then you have me, this like veteran coming in like, hey, will you read my real life story of how like we've been
Yeah.
traumatized? Yeah, it's like, so it was an eye opener for them, but I did value their opinion because I mean, obviously we have a target audience, the
Yeah.
historical people, like the military history guys. Those are the people that are going to be buying our books. Uh,
Yeah.
but I wanted this book not only to appeal to them, to anybody that picked it up. So
Yep.
I reached out to those people, the Dungeons and Dragons crew, and
Yeah.
asked them to read it. And I would say, like, of the people that I asked, like of the civilians that I asked to kind of read my first manuscript, say about probably 80% of them didn't. Um,
Okay. Okay.
which
I thought you were
is
gonna say did. I was like, whoa.
no, it's like
No, that's
pulling
about right.
teeth. It's like
Yeah.
pulling teeth, and I get it. People are busy, they have our own lives and whatnot. So, um, it was it was difficult to get feedback. But when I finally did get feedback, it was from she actually majored in military history and literature. So
Oh,
she
cool.
listed off all these books that she had read, and she's like,
Oh, nice.
yours is great. Keep going. Keep writing." So getting that feedback kind of gave me the motivation. Like, all right, it's not just a pile of shit. It's someone's enjoying it out there. So I continued and I finished the book. And like I said, at the end of the day, I just cared what the two Charlie guys thought.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so I did go through some a little extra effort to try to see if I was doing a good job, and But yeah,
Oh,
so
you were second guessing yourself. I mean, that's like anything at something like this magnitude or that is gonna, not so much expose, but like you're bringing this experience that was something that was traumatic for you guys and stuff, and you're putting this stuff out there. It happened and guys talk about it, but I mean, this is at a different level. So you wanting for it, and I already know you're probably a perfectionist on that end just because of the interactions we had with each other and then reading the manuscript I saw and everything. I'm like, this could be out there right now. Like you could send this to Amazon KDP, if you wanted to, and it would do pretty dang good. But going those extra miles and you doing those extra steps and stuff there, it really shows that you really cared about the story that was put out there, and you care about these guys. And it's and what you've done here is no small feat, man. And it's extremely respectable, and I think it's awesome on what you've done here. Um, Really quick, I know we had said it before, and but getting the guys back together and everything. Don't you have back in Fayetteville? You guys are going to be doing something in December at the Airborne Museum.
yeah,
So
so the Special Operations Airborne Museum is going to hold kind of like a book event for us December 5th.
okay.
Um, yeah, I think it's going to be similar in format to kind of like yours. Did you have like a military kind of like in the morning you did it for like the military guys, and then in the evening it was open to the public, or how was yours kind of
Oh,
organized?
that was the day before I had reached out to, man. I mean, rattled the cages. It got to the point where I sent a cold call email to a particular command sergeant major, and I was like, "Oh, I've done this before, and it didn't end so well, but let's see what happens." But the day before the event, the guys from First Platoon Bravo Company that were the current serving showed up, and I will just tell you. I mean, I hope, and if you need a little bit of contact there and stuff, maybe we can talk about someone we can talk to get some people down there and stuff. But I will tell you right now, just a surreal experience in being able to talk to the new generation and stuff and seeing that hunger to hear from our generation and learn from. And I swear that the new generation of soldier, I know some of the GWAT guys and stuff talk down on them, but they are a smart bunch and they're so much more willing to learn than we were at the time. It really is. It was really cool to see the new generation in that end and really continuing a lot of what Two Fury, they're still that bunch. I mean, literally, um, First Platoon Second Squad is still the aggressive squad. It was almost like seeing our like the buddies were out there sitting and once again. It was really cool to see.
Yeah, we got in contact with the battalion sergeant major and commander. So I'm hoping that we can get
Awesome.
some Charlie guys out there as well from
Heck
the
yeah.
508th. That'd be
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
I mean, that'd be really
Oh, I'm
cool
gonna
to
try to
see.
drive down if I have it open. I would love to be there for this
Oh,
thing,
absolutely,
man.
that'd be awesome. But yeah,
Very
like
cool.
man, it's it'd be really cool to see. Like, I mean, we're not. I don't feel that old. I mean, I feel old, but we're not that old.
But as
So
far as military, we're dinosaurs.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
so
So to
weird.
see to look at these like kids and be like, I was you, you were me. That'd be pretty cool. Um, yeah, it'd be weird to see a lot of slick sleeves out there.
It is
Like,
strange. It is weird. Just a really quick. So your book is hitting the shelves in
mhm.
Amazon on October 15th. But I also know you were saying there's a little bit of things that were Casemate released some early. So if people see them coming in from Casemate, but honestly, I have to tell people out there that if they really want to help the story get out there and be furthered to those Amazon numbers, um, is what you're looking at. And I mean, it's doing good out there, but honestly, this story is something that needs to be shared. I hope it gets out there in such a way to where everybody reads this thing. I mean, this is it's a phenomenal story and what you guys went through and what not only in the Argandab and you bringing the story forward, but what you've done to sacrifice in getting the story out there for these guys. It's really commendable to see all this stuff coming from you. Um, and it's amazing. I mean, I can't wait to see where this goes with everything.
Well, it's like what you were talking about, the snowball effect, right? First it was Bravo Company, and then it was your Damn the Valley, and then now it's the Devil's Playground, and the 101st that replaced us. They just got a deal with Casemate. Their book, Sons of the Argandab, will be out next year. Um, so you were talking about Alpha Company starting their own.
Yep.
It's just a snowball effect. I've been contacted from the second ID guys that we replaced, the striker unit, and they are
Yeah.
speaking about they have a reunion in November, and they're
Yep.
talking about possibly writing a book of their own. So it's
Yeah.
uh, I think it's awesome that each individual group, you talked about support units earlier, each individual group is starting to come back together for the last, I don't know how many years, 12 years, over a decade, right? We've all
Yeah.
tried to figure it out on our own, how to, deal with the valley. And we finally pulled our heads out of our asses and we're like, all right, like we need to come back and figure this out together because we fought the demons together.
Yep.
So we might as well fight them again together.
That was something that Command Sergeant Major retired Puckett there actually had said at one of the more recent Bravo ones. And I had no idea. That guy is just a resource for history stuff like I wouldn't believe. But he talked about um, back in times of the ancient Rome and the centurions and the fighters and stuff there. They talk about in some of the documentation. It's called, I think they called it the crying disease, and it had to do with PTSD. And the treatment really was give them some wine and put them with their own kind, and there they will find themselves again. And it's so weird to hear that from him. And I'm sure I'm a little off, but it really is through these things together that we're so much stronger together because really, and I know not dogging on the 173rd, but the 82nd Airborne was kind of created, they call it all American because we came from all corners of America, but it's really that diversity within there that we offer a whole bunch of different skill sets, and each one of us complements each other in one or another way. So it's really in working together that, you know, that's what makes the secret sauce. That's what makes something special between everybody is we each have something to offer, and it's not our individuality. Sure, there's some special individuals out there and everything, but when you combine that, it's a powerful thing.
yeah.
I think that's really what you guys have, a lot of that going on there. And I see, some of this offshoots with Bravo and stuff doing the same thing, and just different shoots of that. And it's so amazing to see because I can see where it could lead to. And it's incredible.
Yeah, it really is. Um, yeah, just I fully support, or I encourage like guys out there, not just from the valley, just any military group that you know these reunions. There's nothing more powerful than seeing the guys that you served with. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't know how. I mean, there's organizations out there that try to orchestrate those and stuff, but really, when it comes down to it, it's gonna
It's us.
come
Yeah.
back to the leadership, be like, hey, reach out
Yep.
to your guys, squad leaders, team leaders, Joes, reach out to each other, take point again, and
Yep.
see
Well,
how
and
people
another
are
thing
doing.
too, I saw as well. I actually had mentioned, somebody had said something online about that in one of the forums. Hey, leadership, and they were shaking the cage, and I know I ended up saying something to him, and I'm like, well, what's stopping you?
Yeah,
So I mean, really, that's something that when we hit that civilian side and stuff, we've seen what right looks like. And it doesn't have to be the squad leaders and stuff too. And I know that was one of the points that I kind of tried to prove with my end, is like anybody can get out there and do that end, like, but um through all of that too is I had a lot of help from some of the leadership and stuff through that too. And some of the other guys, there's been guys that are really within my life in certain areas. And that actually brings me to something before we jump off of here. Do you have anybody that you want to give a shout out to? in particular that's kind of helped you out during this whole thing? Or
Well, I mean, obviously, Dale Nullinger has been a huge help with just getting me in touch with all the guys. He's done a lot of things for us two Charlie guys throughout the years. I think he's even gotten one guy out of prison. He picked him up in a jail cell or whatever. Um, so he's the amount of work that he's put forward to just keep the band together and to help me with this whole process, getting me contact info. While I'm driving around, he's like, "Oh, this guy's in, Arkansas. Go, you got to go there next." Or it's the effort that he's put forward, and really he's spearheaded the whole reunions and the Zoom calls, and yeah, so I really appreciate everything he's done for us and continues to do for us. And he's really, after we lost our platoon sergeant, he kind of stepped into that kind of role as the two Charlie dad. I mean, we had multiple guys do that, but he for sure has gone above and beyond in that role and keeping us uh, as a family and not letting us go. It's
yeah,
Yeah, I think no
it's
matter
always good
how
to have
hard we
someone like
tried,
that.
like he
Yeah,
wouldn't let us go, and I want to thank him for that.
awesome. Well, hey, it's been awesome talking. I can't wait and to see this stuff at Barnes and Noble and Amazon dropping on the 15th. So yeah, we'll put up links and stuff on the video, but
Cool.
we're gonna cut out. Andrew, thank you so much for coming on, and hang tight, and
Yeah,
we'll be back.
thanks for having me.
So if you've made it this far, I just wanted to say thank you for listening. I know this is the first episode out there, and it was a little unplanned, um, but it was something that was necessary and needed to get out there. If you want to follow more about Andrew and the story of Two Charlie, they're on social media at the Devil's Playground Book, both on Instagram and Facebook. Um, you can get a hold of the book through Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and other book retailers, as well as Casemate's website as well. One of the things that I wanted to go through and getting this episode out there, and the reason why I found it really important, was a lot of the therapeutic effects and the healing that's been happening throughout these different guys sharing the stories. I know I experienced a bit of that with my own book, with the guys within Bravo Company. And honestly, it was detrimental to me to get this episode out there. I really wanted to make sure that we talked to Andrew about all of this. Just Second Platoon Charlie Company has been experiencing a lot of those same things, a lot of those reconnections with the guys. And honestly, it's unintentionally rebuilding that support system that was built in. It was pre-built in within our time in the military. I know some of this is trauma bonding and whatnot, but these support networks are something that build community, and it's something that really you have something in common with those fellow veterans that doesn't translate over to the civilian side. Hence, veteran success story. But stay tuned for more episodes coming up. I have some exciting guests on the list, and I can't wait to get these other stories out there from other veterans within the community that are out there doing great things. Until then, I'll see you later.